In this video, I'll be going over the 5 best ways to get counter damage in fights. I'll be going through different methods of counter damage that work against both good players and bad players, and what separates the two.
So this first method of counter damage is very simple to understand, but sort of difficult to actually execute and sort of implement into your gameplay. So how it works is essentially, let's say you get hit for around more than 100 damage and an opponent is pressuring you and you're boxing up and they have your wall. You have to slowly get out, reposition, right? As you do, sort of make boxes, make space. You have to make space to get clear advantage against your opponent to get some counter damage. But a lot of people will keep making space and they won't actually get any return fire, because when you're the opponent in this perspective, you're just going to be seeing him make space, your opponent's going to make space, and you're just going to walk around, obviously, the right side of the box to make sure you have a right hand peek and just be smacking it. It's not going to be very difficult to follow your opponent because you're not following your opponent through their build. You're not breaking through their boxes and trying to follow through here, because obviously that is a very low tier mistake and has a high punishment if you are good at the game, or you will be able to punish your opponent for walking right into your builds. So how do you get counter damage while making space and sort of preventing your opponent from following your boxes? It's actually way easier than you'd think. So you have to time this so that it's when you're making space, but you're not making so much space that your opponent is aggroing you and thinking that, okay, I have to reposition. Like if they're here, they shouldn't have to think that, okay, I'm gonna go all the way here because your opponent, you're gonna make boxes this way, this way, this way. I have to get my pre-placed like doubles everywhere. No. So let's say opponent grabs this wall, and you're over here as this perspective. A lot of people will do this really good method of counter damage, which is obviously they could have any of these walls. They could have this wall. You just do a 6 tile here. Just, like, let's assume these areas are just open, right? And your opponent has full side of you here. When you're doing this and making like more space, people can quickly just do this and just get counter damage like that. Why this is really good is because you have a really safe peek doing something like this, and you also have the fact that your opponent most likely won't expect it, because when they're from here and they're just trying to shoot at you, they're usually, a good player's just trying to spray if they got you low already, try to get any extra damage they can. For them, a simple 20 tag with a pistol, a 30 tag with a pistol, that kind of stuff adds up, especially when you're already low. Even if you're a little healthy, it'll add up. So they're trying to spray you. They think they just see, for them, they're just seeing this ramp and you're facing that way, right? You're still facing like this way when you're making the boxes. You quickly turn around and just like this, you can get, obviously I can't ADS in creative when jumping, but you would ADS pump when jumping and you can get really easy counter damage with that. This works in so many different situations and with this given setup, so it will look like it's really situation based when in reality it's not, and there's gonna be a lot of instances where you can just sort of use this to your advantage regardless of what situation you're in. This actually works really well when your opponent is trying to get into your box. So let's say you get hit really low and your opponent feels the need that they need to jump in and they're just spraying through, right? They're just trying to spray through, and you're just like, this is, in this your perspective, you're just making space like this, and then you can very easily do something like this. Use this wall right here, this wall right here, and you can use this cover as a right hand peek and just boom, whilst the opponent is over here, they're just spraying through, and then you have a free, as the other pistol out, you have a free pump shot on them and you can get lots of counter damage. So this will allow you to get really easy counter damage on your opponent when they're trying to jump in. It also works in a situation where when you're boxed up, your opponent is sort of constantly spraying at you, and then when they go over here, because you're like, let's say you're boxing up this way, you're going to be able to get counter damage on them when they're spraying like this. You can easily turn around, use this wall as cover, or any kind of wall you can find as cover, and just try to like edit it and just get pump damage whenever you can, because the whole idea of this is that you want to be able to move but then quickly crouch to hide your visuals and pump, because for this opponent, when you're moving on that side of the box, they're getting visuals for this, and when you crouch and suddenly pump from there, they're not going to shoot you. If you don't crouch, they're just going to aim at you and then just get, even if you damage them, you're going to receive damage back. So you're catching them unexpected and on an angle that they can't really get much of an advantage on you. That's what creates like this sort of advantage that you can get with counter damage. It'll let you force them to slow down, because if he gets hit for 100, let's say if you ADS pump, you're hitting probably like around 100 if it's good aim. Then they have to box up, and then you have either time to heal or over aggress if you want to. You have to be smart with that aggression choice though, because if you're healthy, you have to know if you're healthy or not, and if your opponent is good enough to finish the fight, even if they're weaker, because they could very well be a good player, and if you try aggroing like this wall, for example, they could do this and just like easily shoot you and finish the fight if you're like 70 HP and they're like 30. So you have to take into account that even if you're healthier and they're weaker, if you guys are both low, you're still gonna heal faster to full HP than he will, unless he has some broken heals, right? So like in Reload, that's Pizza, and Battle Royale, Chug Jugs, that kind of stuff. So yeah, this is the first method of counter damage. The second kind of method of counter damage is pre-fires. Now, when you're versing a lower level opponent, with shotguns that have sort of lower pullout times than older ones, such as the current striker pump in Chapter 7, you'll have instances where, like, when they're spraying, even if they're spraying with a Stinger SMG, like, you can easily, as you're holding your builds up, quickly pull your pump out and shoot, right? Like, look, if you sort of take a look at the time, it's like you're holding, and then you can very easily pull it out and pre-fire. But if I go over here and grab myself a pump shotgun, for example, and let me just grab myself a Stinger SMG while I'm at it as well to test that stuff out. It's very easy to just pre-fire, but you can't have your shotgun out and your builds at the same time. Like, you can't pull your shotgun out while you're holding your builds, because it takes way too long to shoot, and by that time they're spraying and they're getting in, or they're just doing a lot of damage, right? Or they take the wall. So how do you get counter damage against a good player? Because a good player will not run at a wall and just spray like this. If you're versing a good player, they're going to be, first of all, on a pretty good angle, most likely, attacking at a very safe peak. And if they're trying to spray, they're going to, if they see you with your shotgun out, they're going to notice that. They're going to do like an unpredictable spray. They'll just do this, and they'll wait for you to shoot your shotgun. So if you're like in here, they'll wait for you to do this. And once you hold that wall, they can just keep spraying you like this to get some 15 or 30 damage in. So how do you actually prevent this? Well, it's kind of different. It's sort of combining the last thing I taught you, which is sort of boxing up and creating an unexpected time to for you to shoot, and creating this like right hand peek right here. This is a very good way to reposition, and this forces any good opponent to sort of like come around to this angle. And if they try doing it from this angle, they can't really. It's very risky, because you could very easily drop them down like this from right here, because it's very possible to just do that, and then you have a right hand peek. But you have to be careful here if you're doing this, because you should probably do that, or else they can just run into you like this. They can just do this. So they are going to be forced to actually take this angle or go all the way around and do this. If they stand here, then it's going to be very risky. So, or they could just stand a box away and just spray. So to pre-fire using this sort of setup, let's just make it again here. Say this is the wall that they're attacking on. All I have to do is sort of back up right here, and you got to hold it, and then you can just sort of, when they're spraying it, you're here, you pre-fire it. That's one way to counter damage. The traditional pre-fire is also an option. If they're swinging on the sort of on the wall, you can wait for them to swing, or you can pre-fire shoot it. Like if they have it to one shot and they're just holding their shotgun out, you could just sort of wait and insta replace. It's kind of riskier though, because if they shoot right as you shoot, there's a chance you die as well. My favorite method of counter damage is sort of making it appear to the opponent as if I'm not going to do a pre-fire at all. I'm holding my builds out. I'm only holding. I'm like repositioning here. And then they reposition as well. So they start attacking this box. And I do this. They're spraying. I keep my builds on purpose, knowing the shotgun has a faster pullout time. And then I'll wait for them to spray this wall. Obviously that wall, and then this wall. And then we'll build out, instantly do this. So by the time that your opponent has seen that you only like to hold your builds throughout that entire fight, they'll create a bad habit. Most players will create a bad habit of just forgetting the possibility that you can even pre-fire them. So you could just probably have an opponent pickaxe your wall when it's low, because they know you're weak and you can get a very easy pre-fire. This has happened to me in the past, and ever since I've seen that happen to me, I've learned to abuse that myself. You can use this in so many ways. Another thing to keep in mind is, even if you don't get the pre-fire off, you have to understand that this wall is going to be really low. jump, so you could just be staring at each other like this. You shoot, and they shoot as well. So like, hope to see what breaks. Insta flip this cone. Make sure you have that wall right here in between your box. This is super important, because if not, they can grab it. You'll try to instinctively back up, and by the time you realize you have to edit out, they could probably spray this with their stinger, and you're gonna probably get out as that's happening, or you're gonna get stuck here, and then they're obviously gonna have that really easy angle to shoot you on, especially with that right hand peek that they would have right here. Very easy. And let's assume they're on the cone as well, because every player would be. And so the main premise is that you shoot, flip, and then you just want to either, I mean, the safest option is going back out, like out backwards. You can also choose going to the right, but assuming they're taking a diagonal box fight angle, they're gonna have this wall if you try to go to the right, and then they can just pre-fire you, or they could pre-piece you. So you have to keep those things in mind. You can't just fight with the perspective of your own, but also think to yourself what the opponent is seeing throughout that fight. Because if you're not taking into account both perspectives and you're only thinking about your perspective, you're going to end up in a position where you're like, oh my god, why didn't I think that the opponent could have this, or the opponent shouldn't have done that, or you're going to be making different cope mechanisms like, who does that, why would you ever do that, who has a wall there, who pre-pieces that, blah blah blah, when in reality it could have been completely avoided if you just went the other way, or you know, kept it in mind that that's a possibility. So yeah, that's pre-fires.
The next form of counter damage is going to be repositioning. So this is how you can catch a lot of players off guard, and it sort of plays in hand with the last two counter damage techniques that I taught you guys. But with this one, I would really have to have someone, you know, fighting me in the moment, but at the moment I do not have someone. So let's just simulate you boxing up here, and you're just like in a 2x1 casually in a fight. You got hit like 150 or 100 or whatever it is, you got hit. You're playing really safe, so someone's pressuring your box, you're obviously holding your build, you're editing, trying to block any angles, protecting, repositioning. Then you change layers, right? Some people like to change layers a lot, as long as you're not forgetting the space that you made previously and you're able to utilize it, right? Changing layers. Now, obviously this seems all very basic, but you have to notice how it looks like from the opponent's POV. They're just tracking you normally like this, from this angle, then you edit that cone like that. So then they have to go here, and you go like this way. So like we talked about before, they have to go all the way around. You drop a layer down, so doing this. This isn't a good spot for you to open, because it's it's like they're mentally resetting themselves, because they're coming down here and they're at that sort of like diagonal safe angle, so they're ready to hold their shotgun out. But then if you keep doing things like this, like going like this, repositioning like that, repositioning like that, then you can always usually catch them off guard like this, because if you have something like a cone here, for example, they're gonna have to try to break it at least or something, because they're not gonna expect you to edit. They think you're editing that wall and they see it after, then they're not going to do it. But if you edit, if this cone is damaged, so if this cone is fully healthy and you place this and you edit it, then you can usually get a pump shot off here if they're coming from that angle, or even better, if they're walking left around your box. So if you watch resub, then you'll know that you always want to walk right around a box. If they're walking to the left, it's very easy for you to make a peek like this. You're just get a pump shot. And when you're repositioning, you can always just like turn around and sort of like get any kind of peek you can. And changing layers is really good for this, because it forces your opponent, it's like if you look at your opponent's perspective here, if you're changing layers and you're coming down here now I have to go like this, they go like this, they'll probably have their builds, pickaxe or SMG out here, or pistol or whatever, trying to get your builds weak again, because you just repositioned a new layer with new boxes. You can always edit and pump. So it's kind of hard to display without being in a fight, but you'll notice that if you're in a fight against any kind of decent player, you have to reposition a lot, because they're really good at pressuring your walls, right? So if you're constantly repositioning and you just wait for them to slip up and make a mistake, you can catch them off guard with a really nice pump shot. That is a really good way to get counter damage. The next way you can get counter damage effectively in fights is going to be edit resetting. Now this is something that I don't see a lot of people using, or at least enough people using these days. It's something that a lot of people used to do back in around chapter 2 to chapter 4, and then it slowly like faded out and not many people did it. But it's really overpowered now that many people don't use it that much, and they don't abuse the fact that people fall for it a lot now. So for this segment, I have my talented friend Batsy over here ready to explain this in a better way than I could explain it.
So within the first 5 to 10 seconds of a fight, a decent player's able to understand the opposing player's play style. And this is kind of important because if you know the other person's play style, depending on how they play, they could either like tarp away or like just tarp or box up or something, or they could aggress you back when you get damage on them, which that's kind of the main point of edit resetting. And that's basically when you just edit a wall and then you reset it, so that kind of baits them into shooting the wall, getting you somewhat like a pre-fire. So then you get probably a maximum of like 120 damage back on them, and that makes both players back off and able to heal.
So now we'll show you an example. So let's say I'm aggressing my opponent's box from this angle right here, as usual, and I see them turn around to make another box. I'm gonna go here, have my gun out, as any good player will have, and you see how that can work right there, is that if a good player will come around here and be ready for an insta editor, assuming that they saw the opponent insta editing from the beginning of the fight, they're gonna have their gun out and they're gonna try insta shooting as soon as you edit. But if you reset that edit, then you can actually remove that disadvantage of insta editing, because a good player will punish you for insta editing. But if you reset after you edit, then the good player will shoot that wall, probably break it with the structure damage of this shotgun, and then sort of like when it's low after you reset it, and then he can pre-fire me just like that, and then place the wall right after as well. So that is the power of edit resetting, and you can combine this with the past sort of terms that I taught, which were the repositioning, unexpectedly turning around, and pre-firing. It sort of combines all three of those. So those are 5 different ways you can get counter damage in fights against good players. A lot of people will teach you how to get counter damage against worse players, and they'll show clips of them versing bots. And although I didn't show any clips of me using these methods in game, which I will try to find more and sort of post those maybe on shorts or through TikTok, these methods should conceptually be correct and they should work when you're using them in real fights. And I hope that these are helpful in general. There will be more videos like this coming out soon as well, but in the meantime, try to practice these different things. Try to utilize this counter damage in creative first if you need to, and after that in game, and ranked reload, and whatever you need to do. And big thank you to Vatsy as well for, you know, coming in here and explaining and giving his input as well. Go check out his TikTok, VatsyFN, and YouTube as well. But yeah, see you guys.